Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something you do every single day, probably without even thinking about it. Talking. Now, it seems so simple, right? But believe it or not, an ordinary conversation is one of the most complex, high-pressure performances you will ever give. So, let's just dive right in. Have you ever wondered why speaking, just finding the right words in the moment, can feel like a total high-wire act? But then when you sit down to write those exact same thoughts, it's so much easier. What is going on in our brains? Well, it really all boils down to one simple word: pressure. Think about it. Writing gives you all the time in the world. You get to plan, draft, polish your words to perfection. But speaking? Oh, that's a live performance. You've got an audience, you're thinking on your feet, and there's no backspace key. No do-overs for a clumsy phrase. And that is exactly why our spoken sentences tend to be shorter, and why, the occasional slip-up is just part of the game.
Okay, so let's get into the real nitty-gritty of this conversational pressure cooker. What is it that makes speaking such a mental marathon? Because it's not just about finding the words, right? It's about your brain juggling a whole bunch of tasks at lightning speed.
Linguists have actually pinpointed two key pressures here. First, there are the processing conditions. Just think of that as the mental clock that's constantly ticking, forcing you to plan and produce speech pretty much instantly. But wait, there's more. At the exact same time, you're also juggling what are called reciprocity conditions. This means you're reading your listener's face, their body language. You're constantly adjusting to make sure they're actually following along. It's a massive cognitive load, seriously. And a researcher named Kay Johnson totally nailed it way back in 1981 with this quote: "Being a good speaker means you are getting things right on so many levels at once. Your grammar, your tone, the social context, and you're doing it all in a split second. It's an absolutely incredible feat of mental multitasking." So the big question is, how on earth do our brains handle all this pressure without just shutting down? Well, it turns out they've developed this secret toolkit, this amazing arsenal of brilliant, unconscious strategies and shortcuts just to keep the words flowing and the conversation on track. So yeah, how do we pull this off and make it look so effortless? The secret, it turns out, lies in two really clever sets of mental tools our brains use to cope. Let's start with the first set. These are the ones designed to make the whole process go a lot smoother. Okay, these are called facilitation devices, which is really just a fancy way of saying they're clever shortcuts our brain uses to lighten the load. For example, we simplify our sentences. We drop obvious words, saying coming instead of the full "are you coming?" We use those classic fillers like and to buy ourselves a precious microsecond of thinking time. And we lean on these prepackaged formulaic expressions like "how are you?" to kind of run on autopilot for a second. And this is really cool. You can actually see these tools in action in this little snippet of a real conversation. See that That is literally the speaker buying a moment to think. And what about the repetition of kind of? That's just another way the brain is building the sentence on the fly. And here's the key takeaway. This isn't the sign of a bad speaker. It's the sign of a brain working exactly as it's supposed to. But, okay, what happens when a mistake actually slips through? That's where the second toolkit comes in: compensation devices. Think of these as your brain's built-in, on-the-fly editing software. It's like autocorrect for your mouth. It's constantly running find and replace, hitting the reset button on a sentence that's going nowhere, or just rephrasing an idea to make sure it's crystal clear. And here is a perfect example from that very same conversation. The speaker starts to say "the van," but instantly, like mid-word, realizes that's not right. They hit the mental brakes and self-correct to "the lorry." Now, that isn't a mistake. That is a compensation device working perfectly. It is not a flaw, it's a feature of a skilled, adaptable speaker. So, we've seen the brain's internal toolkit, which is pretty amazing. But conversation is never a solo performance, is it? It's more like a social dance, a collaboration that has its own set of unspoken rules and choreography. So let's get into that. And this is such a crucial point. We aren't just broadcasting our thoughts out into the void like we're giving a monologue. A real conversation is a collaboration. It is all about managing that back and forth. And believe me, that requires a completely different set of skills. And these are the skills that make the whole collaboration possible. The best way to think about them is like the traffic rules of conversation. We just instinctively know how to start and end a chat, how to take turns, when it's okay to interrupt, and, how to smoothly change the subject without causing a conversational pileup. Okay, now one of the most fascinating parts of this social grammar is something linguists call adjacency pairs. It sounds super complex, but it's actually really simple. It just means that some things you say create an automatic expectation for a specific kind of reply. If I ask, "How are you?" you're basically programmed to respond. If I invite you to dinner, you know you have to either accept or decline. It's like a built-in call and response for conversation. But of course, even with all these amazing tools and these unspoken rules, things can still go wrong, right? We might not know a word, or maybe we totally misunderstand what someone else said. So, what do we do then? Well, this is where we reach into our conversational first aid kit and pull out what are called communication repair strategies. So, if you forget a word, you just paraphrase, right? You describe that thing you use to open wine bottles when you can't for the life of you remember the word corkscrew. If you're confused, you ask someone to repeat themselves, or maybe you summarize what you think they said just to double check. These are the essential tools we use to keep the conversation healthy and moving forward. All right, so we've looked at the pressure, we've looked at the mental toolkit, and we've looked at the social rules. Now let's bring it all together and really think about what it means to master the art of conversation. So if there is one single thing you take away from all this, let it be this. Being a good conversationalist, it's not some magical gift you're born with. Not at all. It is a complex, dynamic, learnable skill. It's something we cultivate and grow, constantly learning and refining every single day, whether we even realize we're doing it or not. And let's never forget, it is always a two-way street. Every single conversation we have is this delicate, incredible balancing act. You're producing your own thoughts under immense pressure, while at the very same time, you're reading, interpreting, and reacting to the person who's right there in front of you. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Now that you've seen all the hidden machinery, the shortcuts, the repair kits, the unspoken rules of the game, will you ever hear a conversation the same way again? Because the next time you hear someone say, you won't just hear a pause, you'll hear a brain hard at work.